Good morning, Joe Wenberg, Bluebird Semaphore. Wrapped up in world history for ordinary people, I'm going to do a book talk. And the book is The Rest is Small Potatoes by James Gannone, Gannone. Gene Gannone. And actually, when I finished the talk on With the Old Breed, or during it, I mentioned this book and I said that, somebody had put it in front of me and said I may want to read it. Looking at the title and looking at the cover picture, or the cover, I'm saying, no, I don't think I want to read this. But I said, you know what, I'm going to do it because I'm too much of a negative guy. You tell me, you ask me to do something, and I always say no. So I said, let me do something. Let me show I do have some humanity left in the I don't know, in the composition of whoever it is I am. So I picked up the book, and I couldn't have picked it up more than a week or so ago, and I found out I was quite wrong. Now, it's not a masterpiece. The guy isn't the author is not the latest, the latest, what do you want to call it? He's not the next Dickens. He's not the next Conrad or Hardy. The next any of the great writers. He pushed himself through this book. You could tell that he just wanted to get this thing done. And he did. And lo and behold, it's certainly worth reading. So, and I want to say, enthralled with it because he just hits on so many things, places that were at one time or another pieces of my own life. New Jersey, Piscataway area, really was Martinsville, Piscataway area. His going off to Vietnam. Now, he was a Marine, but and I was a Navy guy. But also, he was just 2 years younger than I. It looks to me, because it says he got out of high school at 1965. And I got out of high school in 1963. And he became a Marine because he wanted to. It wasn't that he got drafted. That was during the era of the great charge to draft dodge, because it was the thing to do then. If you wanted to be cool, you got out of being drafted any way you could. Now, I mean, a lot of them, they ran up to Canada, the draft dodgers. Now, I would think that would be a fate worse than getting drafted and having to go into the military. Because Canada can't possibly be a reward for anything. But that's what they did. And This guy was like 6'2", Italian, and Scottish parents, 6'2". Both parents appeared to be short. There's a lot of pictures in this book. Both parents appeared to be short. The father was from Italy. The mother was the one who had the Scottish descent. And his brother was also short. Well, by short I mean 5'8". He was 6'2". He was a big man. Now, certainly plenty of 6'4s around. 6'6s. But 6'2" is pretty big. And he was, but he was also chunky as a kid. So he had to get used to being ridiculed and taking garbage from folks, which probably toughened him up a bit. And when he got out of the Marines, now I'm just drifting through this novel, giving you some of his autobiographic stuff. That's basically the book, is autobiography, but cut up in slices. And it's not a big continuity type book. It's saying, I went here and then I went there, and then I did this and then I did that. And he just opens up new aspects of his life and talks about them. So that's what he does there. Now, when he gets out of the Marines, there may have been some trifling things he did, but I believe the way it transpired is there was a buddy of his who had some aviation background and asked him if he'd be interested, something like that. Had to go to aviation school. I think this was out in California. And, his MO was, I want to do things that are adventurous. I want to do things that are not, that are not plain, ordinary, 9 to 5 kind of garbage. I want to do things out of the ordinary. So this seemed him, this would be setting him in a direction of a not too ordinary life. His early flying would be in the agricultural aviation industry, where you fly either to put out fires or to kill bugs in the fields of agriculture. So he did a lot of that, and of course, in these industries, this is not Microsoft. We have billions and billions of bent over table serf-like slaves working for you. This is a smaller group of people, and they would know each other, and they would have their tentacles out. An opportunity comes up, they reach out to you. Like I say, but not like in the world of Microsoft or Apple or Amazon, where there's just hordes of slave-like individuals coming to their 9-to-5ers, and the top guys take all the money and they become the new lords of the manors. And he was, as he grew up, he disliked that more and more and more and more. So there was no way he was ever going to take a regular job. That wasn't going to happen. So getting known in the aviation world, he answered an ad for a pilot who knew how and was accredited to fly a Sabre liner. I think that's the right word. Which is a jet. I think it's a 2-engine jet. And he was, as they say, current on that bird. I was trying to think of the word they use. Ship, whatever, jet, bird. He was current, which meant all his FAA stuff was up to speed on that plane, so he could say he was qualified to fly that. And there wasn't a lot of folks at the time, so they did hire him. The caveat was he was going to be flying in Africa, and this was during the time of the genocides and the competition for who was going to be president in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, all those countries over there, Uganda, Rwanda, and so on. So there was a person who was either Tim or Tom, who was the president of an outfit called Presidential Airlines. And he was the one who was looking to hire a pilot. So James, the last name being, I don't know why I'm having trouble with his last name because it's very straightforward. James Gannone. He says, yeah, I'm current. I'll take the job if you offer. And of course they met, they interviewed. This guy, Tim or Tom, hired him pretty much on the spot. He may have done something like the plane's out on a tarmac over there on a deck, whatever they called it. He sprinkles these avionic terms, aerospace kind of terms throughout the dialogue, which it just puts enough in there to keep you in the right mind of airplanes and flying and such. So he says, yeah, he probably said something like, the plane is over there on a tarmac, and go take it around for a couple of turns. And James was never one to back down. And so he took him up on it, he flew it, and the guy says, okay, all right. And that's where a 4-year intense part of this book starts to play out, where he's over there in Africa, flying all the presidents, all the generals, all over Africa. And some of them were some pretty mean dudes. But the interesting thing is that because he knew how to fly, and they needed to get from point A to point B, pretty timely manner. And as you know, Africa's a big country. So everybody deferred to James. Everybody. The only one who may not have was the president of the company, but he deferred in a way that it didn't look like he was backing down to James, his employee, theoretically, and that he was calling the shots, but actually it was James. Interesting thing I found out, well, I find it interesting, is that all these generals, they would only fly if the commander, that's the pilot, the guy who sits in the left seat, not the right seat, the left seat, was white. And this, of course, you got to look at the time frame. He was flying the year 2000 to 2004, I believe. So although all these revolutions and genocides had taken place for decades before this, it was still going on. But the generals, they'd only fly with a white guy because they didn't trust anybody else. And James became the go-to, most trustworthy pilot out there. The airports were very dangerous to get in and out of. The planes were hardly, if ever, put under maintenance review. And if they were, they would just look, wink, wink, and that was the end of it. An amazing time in our history, the history of the world, what went on over there in Central Africa. It never doesn't amaze me. Every time I look at a map of Africa and I see how far down into the continent the Democratic Republic of Congo is, it's pretty far down. There's still quite a lot of Africa left, but it's not in the center of Africa. It's further down than that, and he was flying all over there, at a moment's notice. But he had a great lifestyle. When he wasn't flying, he was being entertained in the best fashion that Africa had at the time. Best hotels, best food, best wines, so on and so forth. Occasionally his wife would fly out. They'd have a nice time. I don't think the kids ever came out. He had 2 kids, Mike and Lillian. That brings up a good point. He does, I think, between the agricultural thing and getting into Africa, he tries to go at being a restaurateur. By this time, he was situated in Cape May. Now remember, he started out up near Bound Brook, New Jersey, in a place called Martinsville, which is quite remarkable because I would drive by on 287 almost every day of my working experience. And I never heard or saw signs or anything about Martinsville. But that's where he grew up. His father built the house. His father was an Italian immigrant, built it with stone blocks like they do. And he had an adventurous youth because they weren't packed into dormitories and asylums like they do to children today. He was able to run around in the forest and the streams and that sort of thing, getting into trouble and that sort of thing. So he had a free and rambunctious childhood, which set him up perfectly for the life he was about to lead. The Marines, his boot camp experience in Paris Island, and his experience in Vietnam also set him up perfectly to be a tough, no-nonsense kind of guy when it came to staying alive, let's call it that way. Remarkable man, remarkable. I think he's still with us, and he might be not too far from me if he's still in Cape May. Last reading of the book, that I read in it, he still was. And if I go down to the neighborhood he said he lives in, I'd probably be able to pick the house up because it has to be unique. He built it 2 stories, concrete material, like concrete blocks, big structure. So I could probably pick it out. I'm going to do a little research on that, see if I can find this guy. I would just want to talk to him, chit-chat about certain things. But he does the 4 years flying for presidential airlines, crashing, all sorts of things that the average individual would have hauled off and went back to the States. They wouldn't have lasted. Few did. But he would always just, pick it up. You know what you're doing or you don't. If you don't, well, then you're the fool for being here and taking the controls. And that, generally, what does the title, The Rest is Small Potatoes? I was chomping at the bit to get to where he would mention something about that, but he only mentions small potatoes once, and it's in the kind of sense where some things are being done, and this is being done and that, and everything else, just small potatoes, no big deal. People use that a lot. So he uses that expression for the title of his book. Interestingly enough, he gave up flying for presidential airlines, which was financially a tremendous boon for him. He made a lot of money doing that. And every one of those Congolese generals or presidents who got flown anywhere, when the flight was over and they were safe in the hotel room, along would come the tip, $600, $900, $1,000, without fail. And the owner, which is, like I said, Tim or Tom, he paid him well, because a guy like that was worth his weight in gold. Trust me, they don't grow on trees. So, and from what I can tell, his wife was similarly living with a very strong backbone too. They made a good team, it looks like to me. The restaurant thing, like I said, in between the aviation, which is spraying pesticides, something he was not very happy with, but he says, "Oh, you got to make a living, so you do this." And of course, the putting out the forest fires, which he was okay with that. But in between that and taking off for Africa, he did the restaurant thing. And he opened up, well, the restaurant was already in business, but it was failing. Some other owner. It was derelict property, pretty much. And he could get into it with little money. So he said, what the heck, I got to make an income somehow. So he gets into being a restaurateur. And it was in West Cape May, and I think if certain things would have gone slightly different, he could have prospered in that. And, that neck of the woods, Cape May, West Cape May, they've all become high-priced domains. You don't step into those towns without a few $1 million to spread around. So, but the business was failing miserably. He couldn't get people to come in on Sundays. Either that or come in for dinner. He had some reason why he couldn't have, as they say, what do they say? What's the fannies in the seats? He couldn't have a full house as much as was needed to make ends meet in the restaurant business. He just couldn't do it. But people wouldn't come on Sundays and other particular times of the week, they wouldn't come. So he went down the tubes with that. I think he actually got lucky and was able to sell the business, not the property, because I don't think he ever controlled the property. But he sold the business. He got lucky, and the ad for the job in Africa was coming at him at the time. So he went from one thing to the other. And thus, I mean, he became, because of that, he became not just a person who did some extraordinary things. He became a person who that's what he did. This tour in Africa, 4 years, totally extraordinary. Hey, way over the top. Way over the top. And I love his literary references. He's at least 3 times in a book. He references Heart of Darkness, Conrad's masterpiece. But the character that keeps coming at him is Kuntz. That's the station manager that Conrad's character is going up the river for the company, the steamboat company, to find out what's going on. Kuntz. And in the current book that I'm reading or finished, Tom or Tim, the owner of Presidential Airline, is made out to be a similar character as Conrad's Kuntz. You know, in the deepest parts of Africa, trying to get things to run when there was just no hope of success. You know, the ambitions of foolhardy men. And I like that. I constantly like that now. It must be said that, you know, Conrad is a particularly loved writer by yours truly. And Heart of Darkness, thin and smallish as it is just, you know, absolutely a pleasure and a prize to read. I mean, not that his others weren't as great. I mean, Youth and many others. The one where the coal in the cargo bin gets in a state of spontaneous, I don't want to say explosion, but spontaneous ignition, and slowly burning, and all the members of that ship know that their days are numbered as the coal pile burns on and on. That one, and many others. I mean, even in his later novels, I think something with an arrow, something with the word
Frank.
What else? Oh, Frank's my brother. All right, folks, I'm going to have to come back to this. I don't know how to do this. Can I do this? No, I can't. Hey, Frank. I'm doing all right. How you doing? Slightly in the middle of something. If you could give me like 10 minutes. Yeah, I'll call you back when I'm finished with this. Yeah, all right. Bye. Well, I should be more adept at this. I should have been able to stop it, but I think once you stop it, I can't pick up the same thread. And I'm not going to try to bundle 2 different threads. It's way beyond my capacities. So anyway, what were we talking about? We were talking about Conrad's different novels, which are at least as much of a masterpiece as Heart of Darkness. What turns my stomach, though, is these analysis of his works by the institutions. And boy, are they institutions. You know, this is what he meant. And look at the way he presents this. And this is marvelous. And that is marvelous. None of them take it for what it is. A good freaking read. That's all it is. But Everybody in this world's got to make a mountain out of a molehill. And the reason is that they're trying to make or justify their existence. You know, getting paid a fat salary at some godforsaken university talking about novels. Goodness gracious. So, anyway, the story continues. After 4 years in the jungle, he tells good old Tim or Tom, "That's it, I've had it, I gotta get out of here." He was a smart guy too, this James. He figured after all these years and all these possible crashes and other ways of dying as a pilot in the Congo, of jet, no doubt, he figures his number was coming up. It was coming up pretty shortly and pretty quickly. So he says, this is probably the time to get out. So I think he had just a few, I don't know, a couple of months, a half a year left, and he told him, "That's it, I'm getting out," which he did. And he's down there living in Cape May. And his wife, of all people, tell him, "We're living down here, all this water all around us. We should get a boat." Now they did a small thing with a boat earlier in their lives. His wife and himself, they went to a sailing school. They learned how to sail correctly, and then when that was done, they never got themselves a boat. It was 25 years later when his wife proposed that they get a boat. So he scoured about, and he finds one up in my neck of the woods when I was growing up in the Bronx. And that puts him right directly at the end of Long Island, the western end of Long Island Sound. And though he doesn't say it, but based on other things mentioned, like City Island, Hell's Gate, East River, so on, I'm saying that where he bought the boat was somewhere in the Throgs Neck area of the Bronx. Now, that doesn't mean that's where it was, but he doesn't say, but like I said, based on other things, he does mention somewhere where the Bronx ends on the water, and that water would be Pelham Bay. And you would look out across the bay. You would see City Island. You'd also look out, and you would see the the western extremities of Long Island. You would see the various bridges, the Throgs Neck Bridge. What was the one that was there before? All these bridges. He buys the boat, and then he's got to get it to Cape May. And people offer to go with him. He turns them all down. He's going to do this himself. And he sets out on what seems to be his last adventure. And he gets down there. I'm a little bit annoyed because he doesn't go into the geography of the Cape May area. When he finally got in there, the last port of call before Cape May was Atlantic City. And he stayed overnight there. I think he went to his brother's place. And then the next morning he got up and completed the voyage. But he doesn't say, "Yeah, I got down to Cape May, I went in through Cape May Harbor, went up the canal. I came in here and I did that and I did the other thing." So I don't know how that all ended. and the book basically ends with that as the last major story, which this is basically a compilation of stories. It's not your classic autobiography. It would be more like an assemblage of snippets from this man's life. And it's a very good, I want to call it a very good read. I enjoyed it. But of course, I know all the stuff he was talking about. I had basically been there now. I hadn't been spraying the fields with pesticides. And the firefighters were always all around me down here in South Jersey. It was like, what do you call it, tinder? Just a tinder box, and then the brilliance of the developers and stuff, the planners, they built all these senior living communities in the middle of the Pine Barrens, which is that's where the fires burn. So, okay, old people, come over here. Now watch it. When you see the smoke, that means your place is going to burn and you better get out of there. Which, of course, they can't because there's old people. But that's where they built them. They're scattered throughout the Pine Barrens. I remember once I was on Barnegat Bay after I had finally relented and said, I will throw my money away, and bought a small boat. And I was out fishing. Just inside the inlet, fishing up and down, and to the distance, I saw the smoke rising. Well, I didn't think much of it, but eventually, I stopped fishing. I got the boat out of the water, and made my way up Route 37, and that fire that I had seen the smoke from was blazing west to east on the south side of Route 37, going through areas that I knew had these senior citizen developments. The next day, when I rode by there, the houses, they didn't burn, they melted. They melted. Not good. But anyway, that's the Pine Barrens. Pine trees have all that oil, that resin, and pitch pine and stuff, which was the original reasons for people to come in and try to claim the Pine Barrens. They wanted to get those nice tall pine trees. They wanted to get the resin. They call that naval supplies, I think, whatever. And the sea captains would come in to get that stuff. They also would come in to get the very high quality water that the Pine Barrens offered. Very high quality. Plus, it didn't go bad. You could get a cask of water, multiple casks of water, put it on your ship, and it'd be good forever. Because the high acid, the high pH of the water killed the bacteria. And, being thrown into the Pine Barrens like I was many years ago is a little bit fortunate because I did come to know little things, this and that I wouldn't have known, but I did know. But that's getting off topic here. The topic was a book talk about The Rest is Small Potatoes by James Gannone, former Marine, tough guy, but he also was leaning towards the type of life that you may be able to call somewhat of a humanitarian, while he was in Africa, he never looked away from the misery that the people had over there and still have. He felt for them. In general, you would say that, and I'm not talking about the book, I'm talking about the man. In general, you would come away with the fact that he was a good guy. He was one of those rare individuals that you could say was a good guy. So, listen, on that note, I'll leave you. If you ever get the chance, I think it's put out by somebody called Seagrove Press. Seagrove Press or Seagrove Publications. And that's it. That's just the book. You can get it, I'm sure. Try it. Try to get it. Try to locate it. See what you get. Now, I did a little searching on the internet. The guy's name comes up. It's all Facebook and that other stuff you can't get in unless you have an account, that kind of stuff, which I don't do. I don't do any accounts. No accounts from me. None. This YouTube thing, nobody can come at me unless I have allowed it to happen. And I don't. There's things you click when you set up your account, and I didn't click them. Nobody can get in touch with me. I'm untouchable. There you go. That's the only way I like to be. I don't want to know that people can write to me. I don't want to know these people. Keep them away from me, please. All right, I got to go. Bye. Seems like that didn't work.